And we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Educator's House. It's been a while, and as you can see, if you've been following my journey, I got a collar shirt on. Must be a special occasion. We are back. Educator's House, our formal professional grade conferences. It's been a while. I'm happy to be back. As you've seen through my journey, I am on a 5-week commitment, and this is a major part of that commitment because this is one of our highest level offerings. I'm about to open up the app and start greeting folks into the room, but I wanted to give thanks to you and let you know exactly what we are covering today: the colored history of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And come to find out, that history is quite colored. So, in this segment of our multi part series, we're going to be looking at the history of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Where was this nation's first formal federal policy related to these concepts? We're going to provide some historical context and journey our way through American history looking at these issues as we lay the groundwork for this long-term multi-part series that we're launching. I've got a special guest, and so I'm excited to be able to introduce him, him and his team, really, when that time comes. And we're going to land our historical journey somewhere around 1965. So we're going to start around 1865 plus or minus, and we're going to move up until 1965 plus or minus, where we see DEI come back into the popular language. Hey, Sparkle, I'm gonna invite you up right now. And the characters that we're going to look at there would include folks like Kennedy, King, while at the beginning we see folks like Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, right? These were contemporaries given their century apart. And how that journey from DEI then and DEI now, well, in the civil rights era, has changed, evolved, what it has gone through. So I'm excited. I know that's a lot, but that's what you can look forward to. So tune in, kick your shoes off, or get your notes ready. Whichever style fits for you, you are welcome here. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So I'm going to make you a moderator. Feel free to manage the stage as you see fit. Welcome to Breer B. Carla. Carla, always glad to see you. In fact, I'm going to invite you up in case you want to do first takes. Rhea Watson and others are in the building. So as the room begins to fill, what I would like to do is check in on the YouTube chat. What's up to my good friend Leticia Wilson is in the building. With that said, I'm going to copy this. Give me a moment, everyone. I'm going to pin this up to the top. Okay. If you are in the listening lounge and you would prefer a visual experience, you can see this live stream. So it'll be the same exact experience that you're having in the audio app, but you can jump over to YouTube Live. I'll be monitoring the chat there and bringing your comments into this live room. If, on the other hand, you're on YouTube and you want to join the live experience, it's a few steps to onboard. You have to download an app and all of that. So maybe on the back end, or somewhere on the YouTube channel, you should find instructions on how to join us if you want to participate in the conversation. Okay, next I will direct your attention to the chat. Peace to the room. One of the things that we have as a culture is keeping the chat active. So you are more than welcome to join the chat, have a whole conversation over there. I monitor the chat, but don't moderate the chat. So as long as it's a safe space, you can cook. So you're more than welcome to use the chat. This is a no pressure space. So if you would prefer to stay in the listening lounge, you're welcome to do so. But what we're going to do in terms of laying the groundwork for how our conferences work. I'm going to send an invitation to Nazi, Dr. Neighborhood. You're welcome to come up as well. Okay. So in terms of the ground rules, this is a recorded and also and simultaneously live streamed professional grade conference. So if you are on the bus, in the middle of noisy traffic, this might not be the right place for you. We do also want to um, acknowledge that, how do I say? This is Educator's House. Our primary mission, and I want to thank Nazi for constantly reminding me, is to center the voice of our frontliners. And so, educators, parents of school aged children, community members who may be concerned about what's going on in the state of education, our mission here is to center your voice. And so, while we do have a featured speaker who will come and deliver some historical context, we want to make sure that it is your voice that gets heard. So please know that while this is a no pressure space, what we do have here is a culture, a one mic culture. So when we do pass the mic, feel encouraged to give your full thought and land your plane. However, as the moderator, I will hold on to the privilege to move the mic along, move that conversation forward. And so please don't be offended if I step in and shake things up on you. Okay, so with that said, I see a few more folks have come in. So Euclides, glad to see you. Glad to see you here. Montrese the Great, Ava St. James are all here as well. Okay, so with that said, what else am I missing? Carla, let me start with you. Carla, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Give greetings. Have I missed any housekeeping rules, or can we go right into first takes? Carla?
I think you're there.
All right.
Welcome back.
All right, all right. Glad to be back. Water's still warm. We kept the bills paid while we were gone. All right. I am going to go. I would like to actually start with you, Carla, and then I'll go Nazi, and then Dr. Neighborhood, and then we'll come up to Sparkle as we do first takes. I'm going to say Sparkle for the last segment. But when you think about this issue of, while I'm entitling it, in fact, let me start with the first title for the first segment that we can respond to. DEI, good, bad, or ugly? This is kind of the first take that I'd like to invite everyone to speak to, because it's a big topic, right? And it could go way back in history. It could go to what I'm going to term the golden era of DEI, or it can go into the borderline ridiculous. So, without trying to bias the comments, questions, or concerns that you have, speaking to the title, DEI, good, bad, or ugly. Let's hear some first takes. Carla, I'd like to start with you. Meanwhile, I'll pass around invitations, and then we'll go to Nazi, and then I'll give greetings to Courtney Savoy. With that said, Carla, the mic is yours.
Greetings to the room, to the moderators. Glad you're back, Hassan. Looking forward to this segment. We've been talking about this for a little bit in homeroom and things of that nature. And so when I think about it, DEI, good, bad, or ugly, I think you could make cases for all of it, right? I think intentionally there's good. There's a lot of good, right? It's about equality and equal opportunity or equitable opportunity for everyone. But because of our history, it's tainted, right? So it's not that long ago. You said we go back to 1865, where we abolished slavery. And so that was supposedly meaning that you had full citizenship and voting and economic equity, but it didn't really play out that way. So we started seeing Black elected officials, but backlash was in place. We started seeing Jim Crow laws. We move up into, the more recent times from the 1950s to now. And there's a whole host of things. You have the whole civil rights movement. You see more legal grounds for DEI, but still we're dealing with things that are not equitable, right? So then we move into affirmative action aimed at diversification, but yet it kind of got watered down because now it became affirmative action for everybody, gender, disability, sexual orientation, still not addressing the needs of the population of color, specifically the African American, from the African American lens. In the 2000s, we have all these corporate DEI programs that have come into place.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how, with one push of a button, those same corporations who were like, yes, we're with you, are now changing their laws and saying, oh, we want inclusion, but we're moving away from DEI for political reasons. So when you look at the whole gamut, good, bad, or ugly, I think you can see it play out a little bit in each of those categories. And I think I'll stop there because I want to hear what someone else has to say. Thank you, Hassan.
No, no, thank you. That was a fantastic intro, a nice little appetizer course for the spectrum that we want to cover today. So she's kind of pointed to those two bookends. On the one hand, post emancipation and this golden era, like she said, and I'm sure we'll get into it later, all the way up until the corporatizing or the professionalizing of this concept. So I'm curious to pass the mic and get additional first takes. I'm going to go to Nazi next, and then we'll hear from Courtney Savoy Harper. Nazi, what is your first take? DEI, good, bad, or ugly?
I'm sorry, Hassan, but I'm going to have to go with the ridiculous choice.
Cook, let her cook.
I think you should have a choice that says necessary, because and a lot of times special education doesn't, our disabilities don't get the recognition they need as part of DEI.
Hmm.
But inclusion, where inclusion comes from is from special education. And I mean, like you said before in homeroom, we special education people with disabilities, we I mean, I don't have a disability, but when I advocate for people with disabilities, we really do benefit from all of the work that the civil rights movement did. Special education really started with, it got its ground roots from Brown versus Board of Education, and people wanted to find ways to integrate and include people with disabilities. So I think that if the thing is about disabilities is it's the one minority that anybody could become. So I, as a white person, will never become black, and you, as a black person, will never become white. But any of us can all become disabled. And if you don't advocate for people with disabilities, then you will be next, or your child will be next. So you, by taking care of your community and by taking care of people with disabilities, you're really taking care of yourself. And I think that special education teaches that wisdom of why it's so important to take care of everybody.
I appreciate that. For those who don't know, Nazi is a professional diagnostician representing this. Well, she's working in the state of Texas. I'm not sure if you represent it, but you up in there, up in there. And so thank you for bringing that to the fore because you're absolutely right. At some point, we are all going to find ourselves disabled in one way or another. So advocate now or, make your own bed. Thank you for that. I want to move to Courtney Savoy Harper, the founder of this space and the honorable emeritus grand of our room here. Courtney, please take a moment, introduce yourself, let the folks know who you are, and I'd love to hear your first thoughts to this title: DEI, good, bad, or ugly. Mike is yours.
Thank you, Hassan. You're always so gracious. We're in the educator space, so obviously I'm coming from the educator perspective. And of course, there should be DEI. But what happens is we're given a superficial version of it. So I think most people who care want to have inclusion and diversity, right? But then how it's implemented is very, very important. And a lot of times it could be very tokenized or not genuine, or it's leaning towards one group and not the other. So the idea of it, absolutely. Implementation of it is the issue.
Mm. That's a bar. The rubber needs to meet the road, and that's a whole room in and of itself. So I'm gonna let you leave that right where it is. We're gonna put it in the sauce and let it simmer a little bit while I pass this mic on to Dr. Neighborhood. Before I give it to you, Dr. Neighborhood, I'm gonna hear from Dr. Neighborhood. Mir Singpai, you're going to be welcome as well after Dr. Neighborhood. But greetings to the folks that are in the room. I just want to give shout out to Pressure. Shay Stallone is in the building. Glad to see you again. Montrese the Great, the one and only Gideon is up in here, and Julian Harvey. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for spending your time with us as we try to bring the highest quality conversations to your Sunday after church experience. We are in the phase of first takes. And so if you want to come up onto the stage and lend your first idea to this before we really get into our featured segment, you should come up now because we're going to make the transition in a bit. So while Dr. Neighborhood is speaking, expect a invitation from me. You can raise your hand and we'll bring you on up so that we can hear your voice as well. With that said, Dr. Neighborhood and then Mir, and then we'll go to our featured. Dr. Neighborhood, the mic is yours.
I go last. I want to. Mir wanted to go in the chat, so you can let her go first.
Copy that, Mir. I'd love to hear your voice. Mic is yours.
Hello, everyone, and Dr. Neighborhood, thank you for that. I do appreciate it. Um, just to point that or bring this out here, y'all all sound amazing. Y'all viewpoints are like spot on from what I have been experiencing and for what I've seen so far. So y'all absolutely was amazing. My opinion on DEI, I of course believe that we do need to have it. There is some bad with it as far as I mean, I feel like there could be some bad if the person who is in charge of, like, let's say a job title, job position, they're like, okay, we only want black people or something like that. Okay, then you're abusing your power. But as far as DEI with, let's say, the workspace, it's greatly needed. I feel like the whole point of DEI was a lot of people who had the credentials weren't being picked, and unfortunately they were more so focused on just picking a white male to fill that position. And so it did leave excuse me, it did make it a situation to where, like, a lot of people weren't able to move forward and they were only stuck at this one spot. So I feel like DEI needs to come back. I support any company that is still, that, you feel me, is still using DEI. A lot of companies did stop, and as you've seen, like with Target, now they're crying about the sales and stuff not being what it needs to be. But at some point, it's like you ask for this, especially when your main consumers were African Americans. So it's like you kind of made your own bet on that. So I feel like if this is going to continue on where they're trying to draw back on DEI, honestly, shop or consume people who are con- how do I say that? Like, buy products from people who support the cause, and just, you feel me, anybody else who doesn't, just leave them alone. They're going to see the effects, especially when African Americans are like the main consumer in this nation. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Wow, you guys are dropping in some great gems, and I think it's going to really set a strong stage as we kind of take our journey through history. I'm going to go straight to Dr. Neighborhood, and then we will move into our second segment. So make sure that you remember to keep the chat alive. Dr. Neighborhood, mic is yours.
Um, I really don't have any thoughts yet, to be honest. I mean, we look at DEI, it benefits who it benefits, and a lot of us that will say it's good, um, are probably speaking on the stories or the narratives of those that have benefited. But then there's also going to be a group of people that feel like there is no equity, it's still not diverse within these corporate settings. So I don't know. I guess I'm still like mixed with the conversation and where it's going.
Okay, no problem. I'm glad that you came up to speak. We got the seat warmers if you want to just kick your feet back, get the temperature of the room, and then we'll have you weigh in when we do our moderated discussion. And for the good of the folks in the listening lounge, we're going to turn the mic up in this next segment. So it's 18 minutes after the hour. I think I got everyone. Leading into
Well, I definitely wanted to chime in with an opinion on this.
yeah, I'm gonna save you and King Sick as we make the transition to the longer portion. But for the good of the group, if you have time, get your popcorn, get your notes out, get your whiskey neat or whatever you're into. Myself, Sparkle, and King Sick, we are going to cook. We're gonna cook all this sauce up. Everybody done brought their little potluck ingredients, and now we're gonna start cooking this good meal for you guys. So with that said, after we finish our segment, then I'm going to invite the stage up again for moderated discussion. So if you are available at that time, you can join the conversation. But me and my stage mates, we're going to get into it after we finish. Okay, so with that said, I think we can. I think we've got it all. Yeah, let's get into it. Forgive me, I'm a little bit rusty, but I'm glad to be back. Let me introduce Sparkle, who you just heard from. Sparkle and King Sick are the featured speakers that I have for today. And I usually find myself in their space as a participant, and oftentimes as the thorn in the side of so many. But they understand and give me space to cook, to serve as the 13th man, to push our thinking to the next higher level in my own special way. And so it was a real pleasure when this idea came up because of the quality of the conversations that they host. When I saw this intersection, it was a real no brainer for me to get in touch with them and say, I would love to have you come over to our space and speak to the educators, the parents of school age children, everyone spanning from K all the way through 16 and beyond. We come together and talk about these critical issues, and I knew there was a strong alliance here. So before I pass it over to you, Sparkle and King Sick, how do you resonate best? Do you want me to just turn the stage over, or do you want to do more podcast style and we kind of have a conversation? What works for you guys?
Yeah, let's keep it conversational. This is your space. We're guests, and I'm a guest. The teacher here is the professor here is King Sick. So let's just keep it conversational.
All right, perfect. So with that said, if you don't mind, could you give an introduction, your thoughts to the title, and then we can kind of drag the whole group back to the beginning of this story. But why don't you introduce yourself, King Sick, and then we'll chop it up.
Want me to do the introduction?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So we host, well, by any means necessary. We've been on the app for years, but in several different rooms, all the way from the Black conservatives to, political thought group group thoughts. You know what I'm saying? By any means necessary is our current space. The brother King Sick has been kicked off this app more times than we can probably count um, for providing some of the information. He was the first person who had, I think, the pro Black Breakfast Club on this app. And so some of you might even know him or been into his spaces. But 4 years he's been rocking here, providing the resident forensic historian of Clubhouse. This brother's brain is like a machine or computer, if you will, giving us a chronological order and timeline of not only events that impact most of the people who show up in Clubhouse in these spaces are from the America and maybe some spaces outside of the diaspora, but also globally, that global outtake. And so I'm hoping today, once the space gets facilitated and everybody has a good understanding of the history on this landmass, that we can open up to that conversation of why so much of our history has been impacted by global social issues and or economic issues, and then this is why we here present day, and then maybe we can do a part two and why strategically we need to move forward with some new ideas. But I'm Sparkle. I help do the research. That's basically about it. And I'm going to put in the chat the Patreon, because that brother, most of the stuff that he has is behind the paywall. If there's one recommendation of a lecture that I think you ought to get on there and get, it would be White Finance, Black Leadership. It's a great lecture, but there's others. But that's about it as far as the introduction is concerned.
Fantastic. King Sick, do you want to say anything by way of intro, or can I just jump right into the first question?
Yeah, you could jump right in.
All right. All right. Welcome, Adrian, educator, onto the stage. Okay, let's do this, everybody. I want to go back. I want to go back. So, Professor, maybe you can help us by laying some of the groundwork for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, in my humble evaluation of history, we had a time, couple centuries, where the United States as a government had a formal policy of enslaving human beings. A peculiar institution, some would call it. And at some point, whether it was some moral compulsion, maybe it was the whispering of his homeboy Frederick Douglass, we can talk about him if you want, or maybe it was just a strategic decision because the war was afoot. But there was at some point, shout out to Abraham Lincoln, an Emancipation Proclamation, which some may have a oversimplified view of exactly what was proclaimed in this policy. But ultimately, one way or another, it led to the end of the war. And as America has shown, it engaged in what I would consider a policy of reparations. They had land that was confiscated after the war, and they were going to redistribute that to the formerly enslaved people. They had offices in the Senate so that they could move into representative government and have a voice in the halls of the lawmaking apparatus. There was an initiative to start, how do I say, formally recording weddings so that they could be recognized. There was the question of birthright citizenship. I mean, what a hot time in what some call Reconstruction. Unfortunately, it was too short lived, some would say, and then came the rise of a new form of government, whether formal or informal. But let's hone in on that space if you don't mind. Can you tell us from your perspective, uh, how did the United States formally get into this inclusion policy through the Freedmen's Bureau, and what was going on in that 1865 time frame? Can you just lay in that context for us as we get started?
Beginning with 1865.
Yes, sir, please.
Well, this is the part about this particular conversation that gets lost on people is we can't deal with Reconstruction. You can't deal with the Civil War. You can't deal with emancipation, and you damn sure can't deal with Abraham Lincoln without first understanding his historical beef, if you will, with Stephen Douglas. That's Stephen with a PH, Stephen Douglas. And we also can't do it without some historical background of what is known as the Bleeding Kansas incident. So, for the sake of the room, can we go over the Bleeding Kansas to bring us up to speed to 1865?
Sparkle, do you have any takes on that?
Well, he's gonna go. He's gonna get into the Lincoln Douglas debate. So I'll be putting stuff in the back chat as he speaks. But he's gonna go right into that for. Let's just do a few minutes because I think it'll be a lot of information at once. But if we can cover that area so that we can get to Lincoln, that would be probably be the best.
Sounds perfect.
All right, brother King. I'm posting in the back chat. Or do you want me to just give this little bit of information?
Well, as it pertains to Bleeding Kansas, a general overview would work for me, and then I can get into the rest.
Okay, I'll give a general overview of Bleeding Kansas. It refers to a period of violent political conflict in Kansas territory between 1854 and 1859. So this would have been, roughly about 10 years before 1864, 1865. Centered around whether Kansas would enter the Union as a free state or a slave state. So this would have been the area of Kansas between 1854 and 1859, and they were trying to decide whether or not Kansas would enter the Union as a free state or a slave state. It was one of the earliest, most direct confrontations leading up to the American Civil War. So you have a number of events that happened, but this would have been the key events of Bleeding Kansas would have been the pro-slavery forces, many from Missouri, known as the Border Ruffians, crossed into Kansas to vote illegally and intimidate abolitionist settlers. And then you had the anti-slavery settlers, often referred to as the Free Staters, form their own unofficial government in response to the fraudulent pro-slavery territorial government. So this is the backdrop of Bleeding Kansas. You have pro-slavery forces and anti-slavery settlers at this time. So is that good?
Yeah, that's a good start. So I want people to understand. So the precursor to the Civil War does not happen without Bleeding Kansas. And the important part about Bleeding Kansas was this term called popular sovereignty. Essentially, popular sovereignty says, because again, we have to remember there's a thing called the Missouri Compromise. The Missouri Compromise was essentially where slave states and anti-slave states agreed that there would be no more slavery beyond the Missouri line, the Missouri Compromise, right? So we can all agree on Missouri Compromise.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So Bleeding Kansas was essentially a mini civil war that previewed the national conflict over slavery, right? And so this is the problem that we have as citizens, I would say, that historians like me consistently are confronted with the story of Bleeding Kansas and how Bleeding Kansas was the real precursor to the Civil War, right? And so when we understand exactly what the relationship was between both Lincoln and Douglas, Stephen Douglas beat Lincoln in a race in Illinois for the senator of Illinois. So this was their first debate. Stephen Douglas won the Illinois seat. He then became the senator. Abraham Lincoln is the loser. This is in 1856, right? 1860 is the presidential election that Lincoln wins over the same opponent, Stephen Douglas. And many people say the reason why he won, and historians would agree, the reason why Lincoln won the presidential election over Stephen Douglas is because of Stephen Douglas's promotion of and or his vehemence behind popular sovereignty and Bleeding Kansas. Basically, Stephen Douglas said, well, shit, if we open a state up and more pro-slavery people come and vote, then it should be a pro-slavery state. If more people come and it becomes an anti-slavery state, then it should be an anti-slavery state. And so, of course, letting white folks in this particular era of time know that depending on which one of these particular constituencies has more votes will win this particular state. Well, of course, all resources from the pro-slavery movement and the anti-slavery movement were centered in Kansas, right? And so the Bleeding Kansas exposed the failure of this thing called popular sovereignty, and it made it clear that slavery could not be settled peacefully through compromise. And the violence essentially did what you call it hardened the national, sort of divide over this thing called slavery. And it forced everybody's position, whether they were pro-slavery, they had to get harder on their position. If they were anti-slavery, they realized they had to get harder on their position. This is where you get the rise of the Republican Party, right? And the Kansas-Nebraska Act destroyed the Whig Party. And this is what created the Republican Party in 1854, which was founded, ironically, for all the talk we have of Republicans today, it was founded on the anti-slavery expansion platform. They weren't just anti-slavery, they were anti the expansion of slavery, right? So Lincoln joins this party, and he sees it as a moral alternative to the Democrat Party. Now, we got to look at that. The moral alternative to Democrat Party. Isn't that what Republicans would tell you still today is that they are the moral alternative to the Democrat Party. I just want to pose that question to the room. Is that not still how Republicans position themselves against Democrats as the moral alternative?
It's interesting you bring that up because if I'm not mistaken, the Democrats of that day were the pro-slavery party. Am I getting my history mixed up there?
No, you're correct.
So it is interesting that we are still stuck on Democrats. But to answer your question, I would say yes, the Republicans of that time and of this time were the moral alternative because their stated point of departure was that they had a divine right, not only from manifest destiny, but even forward in time, that this is a Judeo-Christian nation and it's based on these Christian values. So I understand that to be the through line of the Republican Party.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we when we listen to this historical account, right, then we can follow it through to present day. The Democratic Party hasn't changed much on that stance. There's still a need for everybody to assimilate into this society, and this society was built on that. So the Democratic Party has not changed their stance on that. Just be clear.
Hmm.
Well, I do want people to understand that the Whigs and Democrats were a part of Manifest Destiny long before there was a Republican Party.
Hmm. So how do I struggle through this? So wasn't Abraham Lincoln what party did Abraham Lincoln represent?
The Republican Party, AP.
Oh. Now that I learned, I was 2 years old when I learned that. For some reason, maybe it's just my own social genetic compulsion. I thought that Lincoln was a Democrat, but again, I get that history twisted. So thank you for that clarification. Oh, so Lincoln was the homie. Lincoln was the homie. He was like, we need to emancipate these slaves. Maybe I could ask this question because I'm curious your thoughts on it. Was the Emancipation Proclamation a how would I say, a moral imperative as the Republican Party claimed to be, or was this emancipation really more of a strategic issue, a states' rights versus nation rights issue? Like, did he care about the people who were enslaved?
Yeah, this is an issue that I've talked to people about in my state. And when we talk about allyship, for some reason the black community is focused on whether they like black people or not. Did they like black people? Did they like the slaves? See, that wasn't the issue. The issue is that these newly formed Republicans were smart enough to understand this. If you come to my neighbor's door every day and slap the shit out of them and tax them $20 because they're over 6 feet tall and I'm 5'11", when does the rules change and you drop that requirement down to get slapped and get taxed to 5'11"?
Hmm.
The point is that it wasn't about some moral responsibility to black people. It was about understanding you cannot allow an immoral force to run the government because it's no telling who the group of people are that it may choose next to be the group of people that it meets out its harm and its disproportionate violence to. This is the reason why the whites fought with black people was not necessarily because, oh, I just love me some Negroes. It was about the fact that we cannot allow something such as this to exist and not think that it would ever impact or affect us one day.
Hmm.
So is that a bad reason for white Republicans to ally with black people? Or does it make sense as an argument that one would essentially ride with humanity? Is what they were riding with. They were looking at their own future potential prospects of becoming slaves, and they was like, you know what? We've already been indentured service because a lot of times we forget to incorporate the fact that quote unquote European people were forced labor here in America as well. Are we all in agreement that white people at some point in time were forced labor in America, or do we disagree on that fact?
From the days of indentured servitude. Yeah, that was the policy of that day.
So these white people weren't far removed from being able to say, my grandfather was a slave. Imagine that. A white
Mm.
person being able to say, my grandpappy was a slave. We've never looked at history from that particular perspective, right?
Mm.
And I think it's an important perspective to look at the history of the Republican Party. I think we've all heard about the movie called 12 Years a Slave. Is everybody here familiar with 12 Years a Slave?
Ooh, that was a
Yeah.
doozy.
Well, 12 Years a Slave is essentially the reason for the creation of the Republican Party. 12 Years a Slave, the brother was a free man. They took him into slavery and claimed that he was a slave, even though he was never enslaved. We all understand the premise of 12 Years a Slave, correct?
Yes.
All right, so imagine this is how the Republican Party was formed in Ripon, Wisconsin, was because slavers and slave catchers were coming to the north to communities where there were black people, and they were coming and kidnapping these black folks. You see, this is the thing. They were coming and kidnapping these black people, and many of these black folks, because people don't really recognize the importance of African American labor and engineering at the time, many of these people were the engineers that America relied upon, right? And so to essentially get
Mm.
rid of these black engineers by kidnapping them impacted the quality of life for the people who lived there.
Mm.
So this was something that impacted those communities. And so those communities essentially stood up for those kidnapped black Africans and created this thing called the Republican Party in Ripon, Wisconsin. Is everybody familiar that that is the beginning of the Republican Party? Was because black people were being kidnapped falsely into slavery. Did y'all know that was the impetus or the reason that the Republican Party was created? Was essentially the theft of black bodies. Did y'all know that?
No, sir, but I want to thank you for educating me on this. Thank you, sir.
Glad that you're here. I also see Sun Tzu, the facilitator, came up on stage as well. I'll do a quick reset. If you guys would scroll up to the top, you're going to see a link to King Siik's Patreon. I would recommend that you check it out, see if it's right for you, because there's a lot of high quality content um, that you can only get access if you support his Patreon. So if you are compelled, I would invite you to do that as well. You're in the Educator's House. We're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm going to change the title to reflect where we are right now in the discussion. But I wanted to give greetings while I had the opportunity to those of you that are here. You can also check us live streaming on the YouTube, and we will turn it right back. So if I understand you correct, Professor Siik, these bounty hunters is perhaps a modern word for what you're talking about, came out of the slave states and went into the air quotes freed states and would kidnap people and bring them back into the slave states because they were being drained of their engineers, their agriculturalists, the highly skilled labor of the time they were making their way, whether you want to call it the Underground Railroad or Harriet Tubman or whatever, making their way out of enslaved states towards freedom, towards the free states. And it was the Republican Party that wanted to prevent these kidnappings from taking place. And thus the Republican Party was started. Did I round that out right?
That's correct.
Wow. Okay.
That
So
is correct.
these were the people that he was talking to when this concept for emancipation came up. So now that they have been, let's try to fast forward because we're 43 minutes after the hour. So I want to try to push ourselves through history a bit. Once that took place, can you talk to me? This was before he got assassinated. He established the Freedmen's Bureau. What I've learned about the Freedmen's Bureau was that it had a mission, as I mentioned, to recognize marriage licenses, to establish schools. So many land grants were given. The birth of our HBCUs and a lot of the air quotes HBCUs that you may not think had their original funding from some of these Rockefellers and other anti-slavery, I'll put that in quotes, groups like that. So that was a very big deal during the Freedmen's Bureau. They would send these federal officers to be in certain jurisdictions so that if a formerly enslaved person had a grievance, they could go to this Freedmen Bureau's office and have it properly adjudicated. And I know that probably upset some white folk of the day, because in their lived generation, they went from slaveholders to now having to go in front of an adjudicator to deal with something that they could have just put a black body in a hot metal box to solve it. So there was some big shifts back then, and the poetry of this grand gesture was that it, if I understand, was given like a 1 or 2 year term before Congress had to vote to keep the thing alive, right? They had to opt back in, otherwise it would automatically opt out. So it didn't really last that long. And maybe then we could move into the rise of the Jim Codes and the Klan. So about this era of the Freedmen's Bureau, what can you tell us about that phase of our history, sir?
Well, the Freedmen's Bureau was set up for the formerly enslaved Africans. And you asked a question about the Emancipation Proclamation a minute ago. I didn't get a chance to answer. So if I could ask you to ask that question again, then I'll answer both.
Sure. The question was emancipation a strategic decision or a moral decision?
Right. And so it was strategic. It was strategic and it was moral. It was moral, but it wasn't necessarily for the morals of black people. It was for the morals of whites. There's an interesting book that I read many years ago. I still have the book. And the book was called How the Irish Became White. And matter of fact, let me mute up for one. Give me 30 seconds. I'm going to mute up and I'm going to get everybody a free copy of this book. 1 second. Give me 30 seconds.
Thank you. Thank y'all for coming in to the Educator's House. We appreciate you for pulling up. If you can do me a favor while we got these 30 seconds to ping and share. You can also share this room, direct message, direct text message to anybody. We want to hear many people. We don't just want to be a silo in here. So anybody who wants to come up on the stage at this juncture of things, you can raise your hand and come up on stage. But do me a favor, ping and share to get this information.
So there's the free ebook right there. So if y'all can click on it, make sure it's all legit and that y'all can actually click on it and I'll continue. So confirm that the link is good, please.
Okay.
Yep, I moved the link to the top.
All right, the link is active and good.
All right, so now.
Let me see here. So this book called How the Irish Became White gave me a great education myself. And what I learned was, first of all, we have to understand that race is a social construct, right? We're familiar with that concept, right?
Yes, sir.
And so because race was a social construct, whites who came, or Irish folks who came to America as Irish, initially upon arrival in America were not accepted as white. We're all familiar with this, right? The same thing happened for Jews and other ethnic whites who came from Europe. They were not instantly accepted into what is whiteness, because essentially whiteness from its genesis was essentially Anglo-ness, and Anglo just means England. Y'all follow me? So if you were an Anglo, and of course we know the fight that Irish have had against the Church of England and of course the nation of England and the crown, and now even still today they have the Irish Republican Army. They still have what they call, quote unquote, this terrorist army that fights off British military rule, okay? So when these Irish folks came here to America, they were not accepted as white. And a part of this group of whites was a group of what you call the Tammany Hall. Tammany Hall, Freedom Hall is an ancient, or I said ancient, but it is an old hall where immigrants would gather from Ireland. This is where they would gather to talk about jobs and their political process. They would talk about education and other social issues that concerned Irish immigrants. And so if you read this book that I gave you guys a free copy to, in the book it talks about a man named John Connolly. John Connolly is essentially what you would call the founder of protest in Ireland, because of course they had a lot of protests with England trying to consistently subjugate them as their land owners and landlords, right? Where Irish were not able to own the land, they only farmed the land for British monarchy, and the born men What born men means you're born into a title. You're a duke, you're an earl, et cetera, et cetera. So these were the men who owned the land in Ireland. So folks in Ireland who were essentially sharecropping land that belonged to their ancestors, but they were doing it in order to further the British Empire, not Irish people. So this is a historical beef between the Irish and the English I wanted to explain. And of course, America was British America before it was ever America, America. So we have here this British colonial project run by a very same group of people who have been disenfranchised in the Irish. So when the
Right.
Irish came here, they didn't come here as members of the quote unquote white group. Did I explain that correctly? Is anybody confused?
They were part of those indentured servitude groups, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
So
Right.
back then, there wasn't even, if I'm not mistaken, there wasn't even a concept of whiteness back then. It was only in juxtaposition to others that whiteness even came into existence as a concept.
Right. Well, whiteness was first written into law in 1638 in what they call the Maryland Doctrine of Exclusion. I'm sure the Queen Sparkle can grab that for me. And so this thing called the Maryland Doctrine of Exclusion is really important. In history, understand the Maryland Doctrine of Exclusion, what you'll see a document that says blacks will never enjoy the fruits of white society. This is what the Maryland Doctrine of Exclusion uh, implicitly stated. This is the first time that black and white were codified into law anywhere in the world that Dr. Claude Anderson, Dr. Amos Wilson, Runoko Rashidi, Ivan Van Sertima, and other scholars that I've studied. 1638 Maryland Doctrine of Exclusion is the first time you'll find this codified into law.
Okay.
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 And so I'm
Yep.
sure that the sister's probably gonna put that for us.
All right, cool. So in terms of the Freedmen's Bureau as a policy and what Reconstruction meant, because I think these were concurrent things happening. So tell us a little bit about that. Was it well intentioned, and how did it live such a short? How did it? What do I want to say? It did not last long. Can you analyze why that is the case?
What, the 1638 Maryland Doctrine of Exclusion?
No. The Freedmen's Bureau of
Oh,
1865. Yep.
well, the Freedmen's Bureau was short-lived for a few reasons. One, the sister Sparkle talked about one of the lectures that I've given. It's called White Finance, Black Leadership. Can anybody tell me an example of white finance, black leadership? Give me a real, huh?
Westmore, the governor of Maryland, Westmore.
Okay, what about
Um,
an organization that's supposed to be for black people that's not?
Black Lives
um,
Matter.
yes, Black Lives Matter, the NAACP, the Urban League, and there's probably way more than that.
Greek letters, Divine Nine, yes.
That's a good one. I didn't even think about that.
All right, so I'm gonna give you those that I have in my lecture that I wrote. All right, so at the top of the list of why it failed was, of course, the intense white supremacist resistance, right? The ex-Confederates. Now imagine these Confederates who just lost the war and now Negroes, because again, the Freedmen's Bureau and the Freedmen's Bank was established in order to pay the former enslaved soldiers wages, compensation for their fight for the Union Army. This is the first time in America's history that a group of black people actually were being paid for their services, and that said service was freeing they motherfucking self.
Mm.
You imagine getting a check for freeing your motherfucking self? That's a hell of a check.
That's a good
But
check.
it's a good check in theory. It's a good check in theory. But when we understand white finance, black leadership, it automatically allows you to understand that who the hell do you think was running the Freedmen's Bureau? Black folks who was formerly slaves, or the white people who had enslaved them?
Good point. Good point.
Right? And so the fact is that the Bureau was underfunded and understaffed from the beginning.
Right.
From the very beginning, they didn't have enough money to truly pay all these black soldiers what they had earned during the war. Right? So, and at its peak, they had fewer than 1,000 agents, like 890 some agents, had to serve millions of freed people across the South. So how in the hell are 800 people going to go out and find 800,000 people? That means every person had to go out and personally find 1,000 people. Do you think that's fucking possible? Number one.
Ain't no
right?
way. Not in those days.
Right. And also, Congress failed to provide a sustained financial support, as well, especially as the North opinion turned away from Reconstruction. I'm gonna tell you what happened. These northern whites seeing black people come off these plantations. Imagine being a white person out here educating your son or your child, your daughter, thinking that they're better than black people. And here some black man comes through. Oh, this is Husan Thompson. He's a carpenter. And Husan comes through and build about 5 churches, 3 schools, and 10 mansions. Now this Negro sitting on the biggest house on the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Do we got a problem with that? Absolutely, a white supremacist got a goddamn problem with a brother that was he was just a slave three years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's the most prolific builder in the community. We can't fucking have that. Because what is that telling my little white child that I've been telling since birth? You better than these. Imagine the questions these little white children were asking. Innocently enough, imagine a girl 6, 7 years old. Wow, daddy, every time I see black people, they're just doing the most amazing work. Wow, those people are really smart. They built all of this. Black people? You mean the same people y'all was just beating on 3 years ago built this?
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine the question? Because you know children ask some hell of a questions.
That's a fact.
Imagine imagine a white supremacist son asked, boy, he probably fucked around and got a slave killed. A little white boy asked the right question. Daddy, will I ever grow up to be as smart as Mr. Thompson? Imagine that shit. And so this is the sentiment that destroyed the Freedmen's Bureau. Now, not only that, it also failed to follow what General William Sherman Tecumseh talked about, which is where you get the 40 acres and a mule from, which is Field Order 1519. I forget the exact number, right? But it was a field order issued by a general in the field after they burnt Atlanta to the ground, burnt the Confederacy stronghold of distribution and allocation of its ammunition and supplies to its soldiers. It wasn't until then when he issued Field Order 19, I believe it was, this thing about the 40 acres and a mule, right? So it was called Field Order 15, right? So, but Johnson, the racist Johnson that came in after Lincoln was assassinated, he returned most of the land to the former Confederates.
That part.
Forcing the freed people off the land they've been cultivating. So without land, the freed people remained economically dependent. See, when they had the opportunity to produce off of their own land, they didn't need white folks. But as soon as President Johnson, racist ass, took back the land that was allocated to some of these black folks, this is where you begin to see sharecropping, and then later you have what's called peonage, or what's the other word they have for peonage? Vagrancy. What's the vagrancy laws? What's the other word? Indentured servitude, not indentured servitude. What's the word they have for that? It's a specific word for free labor for blacks post-slavery. Peonage, and there's another word. Convict leasing. Convict leasing.
That's the word.
Right? Which we know we still got convict leasing today. Huh? We still got that shit today. So the historical legacy of the Freedmen's Bureau is much what we face every day. Is a public policy which is supposed to solve black people's problems, which essentially falls short. One, because of white political backlash. There's nothing worse than white backlash, right? This is how you got President Trump in office, was all the white backlash to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Not saying I was for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, but it was definitely white backlash politics, right? That gives you now today Trump. Well, it was this same white backlash politics that destroyed the Freedmen's Bureau. Then, not only that, they brought in the brother Frederick Douglass and his white wife to come in and to be in charge of the Freedmen's Bureau, at which time he realized, when he looked at the books, he was like, there's no way we'll be able to pay all these freedmen. We'll be able to pay all these soldiers. So then he just requested to get me the hell up out of here. And the white folks did what the white folks did after that. They literally took the money that was supposed to go to these soldiers and they loaned it out to their white industrialists and manufacturing and farming friends. So the money that was supposed to literally go to your great-great-great-grandfather and great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather for fighting the war went to white businesses so that they could expand their businesses into the slave South. So this is why the Freedmen's Bureau failed.
This is a good stop, a good point right here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. We're 58 minutes after the hour. Right around the top of the hour is when we start opening up the conversation to the rest of the stage using what you've heard as a point of departure. So if anybody who's in the listening lounge wants to jump in on this conversation, it's going to be moderated discussion style. We'll be moving that mic around as we sort of unpack what's going on. So I see a lot of pink tickets. Ahmed, Gideon, Christopher, Elisa, EWE, Boy, the Hood Therapist, Omar, Christine, I see you, Hector, Julian, and more. All the pink tickets. If you've been around for a while and what you have experienced is of value, then I would invite you to scroll up to the top and join the Educator's House. If you haven't decided for yourself, I'm not trying to pressure you to turn your pink ticket in. But hang out for a while and see if there's some value added here, and then perhaps it can populate your hallway. As we make the transition, I just want to step back and talk about what's going on here, big picture. So, what we're doing is engaging on a multi part series looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion. And eventually, we want it to intersect education. But before we can do that responsibly, I think it was important for us to start at the beginning. And so, we see here America's first federal policy of air quotes inclusion and how it turned out to be an epic failure. And really led to the rise of a strong white supremacist sentiment that really led to an entire new century of terror. And some of which we can claim we still live to this day. And so, with that being said, I just want to thank you, and hopefully, you can join us the following 2 Sundays as we look at DEI in more modern times, post civil rights era up until maybe the 2000s and what was going on in that air quotes golden era of DEI. And then we're going to move into the intersection with education in the segment after that. So please stay tuned over the course of the next couple of weeks. We do stream live on YouTube, so you can check out at Educator's House there. And we also have a link that I'll put up to the top to support our feature speakers Patreon. You definitely want to check that out. So I'll put that up as I move the mic around. Thank you, King Siik and Sparkle, for laying in that groundwork. What I want to do, you guys, is pass the mic and get some response from our fellow stage mates. So that could be in the form of a Q&A, or it could be just kind of adding to the discussion and furthering what's come up. And if it's all right, who was that that spoke? Oh, he already left the stage. Well, too bad for you. I'm not sure who wants to pick it up. Anybody want to flash? Actually, let me introduce the new voices. So I see Adrian, the educator, is here. Sun Tzu, the facilitator, and the Dominique are the new voices. I'd like to center you guys, so I'll pass it in that order. Adrian, the educator, if you're available, go ahead and introduce yourself. If anything came up for you, questions, comments, or concerns that could add value to the conversation, I'd love to hear it. If you're available, the mic is yours.
Hey everyone. Thanks for the introduction. I don't want to add much because I mean to try and add on to the amazingness coming from this man is I'm not gonna insult myself in that way. But I did want to lift up. It was pretty amazing the amount of learning. Um, you don't often get these spaces on Clubhouse, right? And so I'm appreciative for you for curating it, and then King for what you're bringing. the, I didn't know Frederick Douglass' wife was white. I mean, that sounds real silly, but it was. I was like, wow, I didn't know that.
You heard.
There's so many other. I mean, I know that's a silly one to kind of sit on, but it definitely. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. You know, some of it was looking at stuff in a new light, so I kind of been researching in the background as well. So I just wanted to lift you up and thank you all for curating an amazing space to push my own thinking and whatnot. So that's it.
Appreciate you.
Well, that's good. Usually they want to kill me right now.
No, you in a safe space here. We appreciate it. Adrian is an internationally traveled educator, and she has her own spaces as well. So if you have any interest in travel, especially as it intersects educators, you definitely want to add her to your network. Sun Tzu, the facilitator, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what came up for you? All right, brother Sun Tzu might be in listen only mode. Dominique, greetings. You want to introduce yourself and tell us what came up for you?
Hi, I'm Dominique. I'm a Black Republican, and I gotta clear up. Um, Frederick Douglass's first wife was Black, and she died, and he was old. And Frederick Douglass was the first black man to run for the president of the United States. Harriet Tubman, she freed, according to her own records, 70 slaves. And that's great. That's great. Many of them were her family members. That's cool too. That's cool too. They won't tell you that she was married to a freed black man and she had a job and she went to work. They won't tell you that. But Frederick Douglass freed over 800 black slaves. So don't say that he had a white wife and therefore we should not respect this man. And I know nobody said that, but that was the undertone, the undercurrent. You know, don't say that. Frederick Douglass escaped from slavery, freed himself, and like I said, ran for president. His wife died, and he married um, his white caregiver. So just because he married a white woman does not make him any less of a man. And that's the one thing that I don't appreciate. And the Republicans were the party that were founded to end slavery. The Democratic Party years ago, and I looked for this. They scrubbed the internet and took it down. The phrase white supremacy was invented by the Democratic Party. It
Mm.
said the Democratic Party on a circle with the donkey in the middle, and on the bottom it said white supremacy. And they took all of that mess down. You look at any city, Oakland, Portland, Seattle, Frisco, Los Angeles, that's just destroyed. It's all run by Democrats. And here's what's up. I'm going to say this and I'm going to land. They want to pretend that they have black people supporting them so that they can steal elections and remain in power. And therefore, they will never fix anything that's going on in the black community. I will land there.
Appreciate you, Dominique. And I appreciate that rebuke because I sure was going to get on Frederick Douglass' neck. I was going to see a whole bunch
I
of
put
new
it in the
rooms,
chat. I
whole
put
bunch
it
of
in
new
the
rooms.
chat. That was his second
His
wife.
second wife. Yeah, thank you for that fact check. But I could just hear a whole bunch of new rooms about how the black man left the community again, all the way back then. So I appreciate that. Let me move to some new voices. The Hood Therapist, E Double, and Leticia all came up on stage. I'm going to pass the mic around in that order, and then we can go more popcorn style. The Hood Therapist, welcome. Please introduce yourself and tell us what came up for you.
What's going on? Can y'all hear me? Can I be heard?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Going on? What's going on, brother Hassan, brother Sig, sister Sparkle? Welcome, welcome. Well, thank y'all for having me in this new space. The context of what I've heard, is very pivotal. It's very powerful because it makes things less nuanced and it forces us to be able to get out of our knowledge comfortably. Like we got to get out of our what we understand as facts and history, and we have to look at the got to look at our history in all of its totality. We have to look at all of the nuance, the good, bad, the great, the ugly, the indifference. We got to look at it because if not, we're only going to start to romanticize history. And I think that is one of the biggest problematic um, thoughts and reactions that we have as Black people is that we have a tendency to romanticize our history, right? And I don't think we're in a position to romanticize and say how great or how poor we did. We need to look at things objectively and look at it with the facts so we can be able to move effectively. Um, I wasn't familiar with the book How the Irish Became White, um, but I think it's important for us to be able to look at that to be able to understand. Hey, listen, um, we need to have a better understanding of what allyship is and what are the steps and uh, what is appropriate and effective for allyship if we even want to have allyship, right? We have to understand politics. We have to understand history, politics, understand, comprehension of what these things do to our lives. Uh, if we don't, we're going to find ourselves in a compromise where our intellect is going to be weaponized against us. By truly understanding DEI, truly understanding the Freedmen's Act and the Freedmen's Bank, us understanding and comprehending what it was meant to do versus what it did, it helps us come to terms with what we need to do moving forward. So I truly appreciate you, Brother Hassan, for hosting this space, Brother King, Sister Sparkle, for giving us this information. Um, Most people will just look at this information and feel good about it. But I encourage each and every one of us to take the next step. And instead of us just looking and just saying, yeah, that does make sense, fact check it, look at it, get the nuances so we can have a better understanding, so we can be able to have a better chance of moving forward next year in the political space. And I'll land there again and thank y'all.
I appreciate you, King Sick. Hold this feather in your cap because I might swing back to you after I pass it to Leticia. He mentioned what it was meant to do versus what it did, and the question that came up to me was, I wonder, did it do what it was meant to do? But we're gonna come back to that. Let me pass it to Leticia Lewis and allow her to give greetings to the room. And please, Leticia, share with us what came up for you. Mike is yours.
Hi everyone. I'm driving. I hope you can hear me. I typically go through a little dead zone right here, so hopefully you can hear me. But this has been really good on my drive to listen to this. Thank you so much, King Siek. Thank you for that lecture. That was so insightful. First of all, I want to say that I'm Caribbean, so I know sometimes we get into the whole, about who's black, who's not black, and who identifies as such and stuff. So I want to say that I'm sharing my perspective as, a black woman from the Caribbean. And I'm always fascinated with American culture and just even learn over the years, learn the voting process and being a part. It's a really cool thing. So I'm grateful that I was able to vote in the last two elections. And for me, seeing when Biden was in office and seeing him put so many black women, it was very touching, and I loved seeing it as a black woman. And seeing all the black women judges was so cool, and I'm grateful that he did do that. And I heard King Siek mention about the white backlash, and I think that you're absolutely right. Trump definitely wanted to come in and overturn as much as he could, and do undo a lot of the things that Biden had put in place. And yeah, that's a really, like, it's the backlash of that all. And I know prior to the election there was a lot of talk on social media about why the need to put black women in these positions, and kind of like the token, when they talk about, okay, checking the box, and then in even in like corporate America and so, and why it's typically, the black women that are being hired versus the black man and stuff like that. So I know that in social media there was already that brewing of the gender war and stuff like that. And so that definitely played a part in the election as well. In my opinion, just assessing it and just seeing like what played a part in, this extreme like end of, okay, we're gonna have to go to the extreme end. And yeah, so I hope my thoughts are coming together. I'm sorry that I'm rambling, but just want to say this stuff is very fascinating. And just to see how over the country, how they voted. I know this election they were really like adamant on getting Biden out, but it's really cool to see the patterns of just how America has developed, and to see the different patterns. Of course, like, the southern states are voting red because of their ties to, slavery, and the more northern states vote blue because they were more like, industrial. And it's really cool. It's really cool to just to see how over the years how that shifted, Republican versus Democrat and stuff, and just to see like who now believes, because I heard Dominique said he was a Black Republican. So I hope that kind of ties into what we're talking about, but just really cool just to see as an outsider, as I said, and learning about American history.
Thanks for jumping in on that. I want to roll this mic into the middle of the stage and see if anyone wants to take the first get on this dance floor as we move more popcorn style. While I do that, I just want to acknowledge Leticia Wilson Wilson in the chat. She's been keeping along with us over on YouTube. I'll drop the link to the YouTube live stream so that you can easily share this conversation with others. I know how it can be with people who are not already on the app. She pointed out as a fact checker that Frederick Douglass married Helen Pitts Douglass, a white woman, in January 1884 after the death of his first wife, Anne Murray Douglass, for the record. She gives a shout out to everybody and the great diversity of voices that are here in the room. She appreciated the next to previous speaker for unpacking that romanticized version of our history. And that's kind of where I want to come to you, King Sick. And she then asked this question: what has provoked the extreme end of DEI? And I think that is something that I hope to get us to. But in order to get there, let me just roll this mic, see if any of the previous speakers want to kind of spark some conversation, and we'll take it from there. So my mic is closed.
I had a couple of questions. One is, I've got the whitewashed history growing up, about abolitionists in history, and uh, something that maybe we should think that these white guys who were abolitionists were doing great things. But when I looked back in history, I learned that these abolitionists didn't believe, they were very racist because they didn't believe that black and white people could live together, and so that's why they sent them. They would free them, but then they'd send them to um, back to Africa or Liberia or whatever. And but wasn't Harriet Tubman part of that American Abolitionist Society? Is one of my questions I have.
Yes. I think it's important to note that when we look at, because the sister Leticia brought up something in terms of the gender wars, and we have to look at that, what would have been the global second wave of feminism to kind of understand that. But when we look at, just to answer your question in regards to this sort of thing, when King brings up the Missouri Compromise, you're seeing two things happen simultaneously. You're seeing the preface of this pro-slavery and anti-slavery. And on the anti-slavery side, there were abolitionists, white abolitionists. And those people were the individuals who also were strategically moving the country from agriculture, or predominantly agriculture, to industrialism. Because after all the dust that settles, we're going to move into the first industrial revolution. So we're going from agriculture to industrialism. This is why it causes such an issue when you come up north and you kidnap Black people who have the architecture, the engineering, the agriculture. You still need it up north. And the Black women at the time were the majority of the midwives. That's at least three pillars of society that you need in order to build: agriculture, engineering, we delivered the babies, and a little bit of agriculture. And so if you come up there and you've taken these people while we're trying to do this, while we're trying to switch from this agriculture to industrialism, we're going to fight back on that. And it was for them, we don't want to let the immoral people run the country. We don't want this immoral idea of enslavement to be the identity or foundation of us moving forward as a country. So those are things that are happening at once. And that's why I think it's important to get away from the like, love, hate conversation, more to what was going on at the time and what were the outcomes, because that is the hindsight of 2020 if we use it responsibly, is that we can see the outcomes. The minute we go into the industrial revolution and it starts kicking off, then those black people who were industrious, right? Because we know between 1862 and 1939, 7 out of 10 patents submitted to the US Patent and Trademarking Office were submitted by black men.
Hmm.
So if I'm an industrialist at that time, my number one competitor becomes those people where the most of the intellectual property and most of the intellect is happening.
Hmm.
So that's where when Sick talks about, what ends up culminating and happening, that's what happens. But I want to be clear to everybody: the Republican Party never switched. The Democrat Party has never switched in this country's history. The Democrat Party is still the party of anti-blackness, and the Republican Party is still the party of we just want to build. Are there people on both sides of that who harbor prejudice views? Probably so. But the only people who changed their stance were black people, African Americans, Negro, colored, whatever you want to call us today. That's the only thing that changed. The political parties did not change.
Yeah, we
I
cooking. I'm gonna let
strongly
Dominique
agree.
go, and then I know Adrian, the educator, got in. So let's go do it in that order, and then Nazi, if you don't mind, you can respond after that. Dominique.
No, I strongly agree. And I got to admit, I'm looking back at this. The Democrats are the party of slavery, mass incarceration, abortion. They just opened up the borders and tried to replace all of Black America with the third world. They brought in Trendy Awag. I don't know how I'm messing it up, right? Trendy Aragua. They they brought in MS-13, right? Trump tried to kick them out. You get these Democratic judges saying no, bring them back. Every time a Black community needed resources, we were told those resources are not available to you. But then an illegal alien crosses the border, he get $2,000, $2,200 a month, a free cell phone, and a ticket, a plane ticket to go anywhere he want to go. Now, I mean, it goes worse than that. I mean, you can go back, you can look at prison labor, you can look at Reconstruction. The first 19 senators who were Black, they were all Republicans. The first Democratic senator was in the 70s, right? The Democrats are the historical enemy of the Black man. Who was Dr. King marching against? The Democrats. George Wallace and who was the president? Lyndon Baines Johnson, a Texas Klansman. He was the guy who got the money from the Texas oil men
Hmm.
and gave it to the CIA to have JFK assassinated.
Hmm.
That guy, that guy. And Dr. King delivered the black vote to that guy. What did Johnson say? He said, I will have those niggers voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
Now, Dominique. Don't be telling all that truth now. Don't you be hurting them with the truth, Mister Dominique. Let me. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I do want to turn the attention, if you don't mind, sir, to Tamara
Go ahead,
Johnson
go ahead,
Shealy.
sir.
She's a new voice on the stage. So the queue, I hope you guys don't mind, but I do prioritize honoring new voices. And she is the lead advocate of Reparations Sunday, advocating reparations for descendants of U.S. chattel slavery. So I think she might have some value to add. So I'm going to slide her in, and then we're going to go with the cue that you saw in the chat. Tamara Johnson Shealy, welcome to the stage. Feel free to introduce yourself and tell us what's come up for you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the invite, Sparkle, to the stage. I'm Tamara Johnson Shealy. I was a candidate to the United States Senate here in Georgia, but really, my platform, my focus was the Black community. I spoke very boldly about our needs. I'm a reparationist. I lead the charge here in Georgia for a reparation bill that mirrors
California. I'm a part of the activist movement nationwide, and I'm just here to listen and chime in. I'm just got into the room about maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, so I'll continue to listen and step in when need be. But thank y'all for the conversation. I love rooms like this where we can learn and grow together. So thank you for the conversation today.
Appreciate you. To get back into the queue, I'm going to go straight to Adri, educator, then Nazi, then Carla. Adri, mic is yours.
Uh, I- I'm
How do
just
you
you
how do you
can
want me to say your
skip me. The
name, girl?
conversation's kind of you can no you can no. You call me Adrian, that's fine.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
changing it for search purposes, so you can't easily search me,
I
but you can
got you.
still call me Adrian. I
Copy.
just didn't. People be doing some weird stuff on this app, so I had to distance myself from my real self. Um, the conversation kind of took a turn in a way I don't know if I want to offer more into. So Nazi can go.
I know Nazi might have had a second backup question to the
Yeah, I had one
whether
more
or not
question. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit and as an educator and the opportunities that education has to give, the role of literacy in enslaved people who were that could read. I know I teach about the history of Muslims in America, and I read so much about how people who were enslaved and brought here, once they figured out that these people could read, even if it was in Arabic or what have you, that then they had an argument that they shouldn't be slaves. And um then the abolitionists would society would target those people to send back to Africa first, because they thought it was just these people were not enslavable if they could read.
Hmm.
And also the threat of literacy. I mean, I talk a lot about in my rooms about the Mississippi Miracle, which Mississippi, which is predominantly obviously black population, has had the worst reading literacy levels in the whole, United States pretty much. I think they were 49th on the NAEP. But then when they um, brought Reading League and some of these organizations to actually improve the literacy of Mississippi, and all of a sudden in a few years they were a great threat because they had risen to like 29th place. I don't remember the exact place, but a number of ranks where the whole rest of the United States was not improving in literacy on these same measures. So this whole idea of giving, and for me, I diagnosed dyslexia. It's a big threat to say that black kids have dyslexia. They want this reserved as a white disability.
Mm.
So I think any time that you could come back and circle around to literacy, I think that could go throughout all of history. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a couple of notable events that happened, and so I started already when I gave the information about between 1862. So this would have been about a year before the Emancipation Proclamation, gets authored or penned. Um, a few years, 3 years before 1865, and so forth. So between 1862 and 1939, 7 out of 10 patents that were submitted by Black men. 7 out of 10, 70% of the patents were submitted to the U.S. Patent and Trademarking Office. I want people to kind of look at history through the framework of who King Siik has already mentioned, Dr. Amos Wilson. Dr. Amos Wilson tells us that the manipulation of history is the manipulation of consciousness. And the manipulation of consciousness is the manipulation of possibilities. And the manipulation of possibilities is the manipulation of power. And so, somewhere the history has had a framework that has sort of manipulated the consciousness a little bit when we talk about whitewashing of history and just the whole narrative of certain things. Is it historically accurate or not? We can go back and debate those points, but I think it's important that we look at certain things because hindsight, again, gives you this 2020 when we talk about this illiteracy, right? And what that actually means, because literacy doesn't necessarily equate to intelligence.
Hmm.
Does everybody kind of agree with me on that or no?
No, I'm with you on that.
Okay. So push that narrative a little bit in understanding even something as complicated as dyslexia, because there's so many varieties of dyslexia that exist, you know what I'm saying, within the framework of being on sort of the a spectrum. Let me just say it like that instead of the spectrum, because I don't want to give it the stigmatism that it has when I'm talking about this literacy things. Literacy, knowing how to read English, knowing how to be literate in Spanish, knowing how to be illiterate in Italian, knowing how to be illiterate in maybe Swahili, doesn't make you illiterate in those other languages. I just put it, okay? It doesn't make you unintelligent person. But in this era from the 1800s to the 1900s in this century, you know what I'm saying? This it becomes the maintenance, the implementation phase of America, and an overlap with the maintenance phase of America. So this is the time period in which we started, or America started to begin to codify. The brother King Sick already talked about the 1638 Maryland Doctrine of Exclusion, and then there would be other exclusionary laws that would follow from Virginia, I think, writing the most. Virginia, Maryland, that whole area is where you get these exclusions. North Carolina, this is the whole area where you get those exclusionary laws. And they took the social construct of white and a social construct of black, and they obviously were saying, hey, white is this and black is this. I won't go into the particulars because that's not what I'm trying to do, but it's where you actually then get the idea of people saying, well, black people had this high literacy rate. I think at the end of slavery, it was 70%. 40 years later, maybe 40 to 45 years later, it had went all the way down to 30%. 20 years is commonly, 30%. 20 years is commonly accepted as a generation.
Right.
So 2 generations later, the literacy rate for black people went from 70% to 30%. What I would do, for just to give everybody some homework, because this just can't be a free for all in here, right? I would like for you all to go look at the white illiteracy rate, or the white literacy rate under the social construct. At the same time that black folks was moving from 70 to 30%, I want you to just go look and see what the white literacy rates were during that same period of time. I think people would kind of then understand why we push towards this DEI with more of an accurate understanding of what DEI was supposed to accomplish. And that, yes, it did accomplish what it was supposed to. Because it might, if we had a better understanding of how things proliferated, we'll have an understanding that DEI was actually supposed to help white women and white people, white children, and it did. So it accomplished what it was supposed to.
What was the time frame for that study on white literacy rates?
In 1860 to, I would say, let's do 1862 to 1939,
All right, y'all. Quick
right?
research. The challenge is afoot. So let's look at 1862 to 1939. Adrian's going to jump on that. Anyone else, you can also drop your research in the chat to add to the credibility of our conversation here. Okay. Anybody else? I think we have cleared the queue. No, Carla, you would be next. Thank you for your patience, and I yield the mic to you, ma'am.
Thank you. I think mine is in the form of a statement and then probably a question for Sparkle and King Sick, just to get some thought going. So for me, I want to say thank you. I think the education was phenomenal. It helped me answer that question about the Emancipation Proclamation being one of a moral freedom or strategic freedom. And clearly, from what I heard today, that it was both. And so for me, what I heard was that different will not automatically equal inclusion or equitable treatment, by the ruling majority. But opportunities may come when it is politically or economically advantageous for them to make a move that would benefit those who may look different or whatever that capacity is. And I think we have to be ready to capitalize on it. And I think the question I have is there really a way to capitalize and make it better? And it makes me think back. I used to live in Wilmington, North Carolina, right? So when I moved there, it was a minute before I learned the history of Wilmington. And there was this that I'm sure you're familiar with, this coup in 1898, like right after the slavery period. Over those next 30 years, Black people were building businesses and schools and churches. They were gaining political power. They were voting, holding office, and even working side by side with white allies who chose to work with them. Black owned newspapers, Black doctors, a strong middle class, right? But that was threatening. And it was actually white Democrats, the elites, who came in and launched a campaign to instill fear and lies and start spreading racist comments about Black men and Black people. And then in November 10th, 1898, they actually did a coup. They came in, burned down the newspaper, killed Black people, installed their own leaders illegally, and the government did nothing. And for years, it was never talked about other than it was some type of race riot. But it wasn't, it was a coup. And nothing ever happened to help restore what had been built by this group of people. And so, their thought process was they were going to take power back by any means necessary. And that reminds me so much of what I hear today. And so, my question is, how do we begin to make a move and stand against the powers? And I'll land there because I don't know if I'm forming my question, all the way, but that's what I'm thinking right now.
Okay. I mean, well, I think so you're asking how do we make this work is basically
Yeah.
what you're asking. Yeah.
How are we going to rally and begin to take back power?
Yeah. Well, I think there are several different ways to go, some more controversial than others, right? First of all, shout out to Tamara, because she fighting the good fight. And I look, and if y'all can understand, she's she said, I'm a reparationist. And here I am all the way on the other side of that. And I am not a reparationist, right? But I understand the importance of being able for her to have a lane to be able to do what she's doing out here. Shout out to reparations, Sunday reparations. I understand the importance for her to have a lane and a voice. And I hope that when people hear my idea of, or it's not even actually my idea, but we are the builders, King Siik, the whole Bilcott thing, that there is a lane for that as well. And we can show you throughout history how those two things existed at the same time, so that we can sort of address this problem with sort of a two-pronged approach. And I want to just give you names. We talked about Frederick Douglass. I want people to go and do a little bit of homework on Henry Highland Garnet. Henry Highland Garnet to Frederick Douglass is what Martin Luther King was to Malcolm X. And a reparationist being in the space is the same as a Black reparationist being in the space is the same as a person who's not a reparationist at all being in a space together and being able to talk and give this information. So we got Henry Highland Garnet, Frederick Douglass, in particular 1843. Please look up that speech to the convention at the time that Henry Highland Garnet gave his speech and Frederick Douglass spoke after him. And then, of course, I think most people, if it's within your timeline, the last 58 years, 60 years, then you understand who Martin Luther King was to a Malcolm X. They were not enemies.
Mm.
Henry Highland Garnett and Frederick Douglass were also not enemies.
Mm.
So I will, if this helps allude to it, then you see the idea is that we sit down and we have a common understanding of a timeline of what actually happened. We will support each other in that. Black people were not illiterate at the turn of the century. We were not a downtrodden group of people. We have been domesticated terrorism had been used and exacted on us, lynching and so forth. That, but we were not. We were actually doing very well in the time period that existed. I'm giving this to you in generations. And one of the things that when we talk about it, if we go up against the mainstream media and or educational system, they will tell you that individuals like me are speaking and romanticizing black codes, Jim Crow, and all those other things. But I'm not. I'm only gonna look at the statistics, educational, income wise, and the 100 plus townships that black people were building throughout U.S. territories. 100 plus. 100 plus, meaning the same thing that happened in Wilmington happened in a lot of other different places, some that we don't even know today, except that if we have somebody who's still understanding the history of that area. But we were building in a very short amount of time. So if you believe that the enslavement took place, there would have been 237 or 247 years of free labor and 2 generations out of slavery. We were doing very well. The only issue we had was a lynching problem. They said, "Hey, we see you doing well. This is a race for industrialism. We're moving out of agriculture. We're moving into industrialism, and we don't need the people who have the most amount of intellect, the most amount of intellectual property. We don't want to be able to have to compete with you on that level." And so lynching became an issue. When you look at the way that history is framed today, they have rewritten it, and everywhere where you see human rights, everywhere where you see civil rights before 1954, before Martin Luther King comes in, you should replace it. Anytime you're reading any historical narrative before 1954, if they put the word civil rights in there, change it back to what it was, human rights. Henry
Mm.
Highland Garnett was fighting for human rights. uh, uh, Ida B. Wells fighting for human rights.
Mm.
W.E.B. Du Bois fighting for human rights. Every black person that we had, the AME Church, whether however you feel about the Abrahamic religions, they were fighting for human rights. It's not till later that they've changed that word, that human rights to civil rights.
Mm.
Why? Because human rights was a global issue. It was the very issue that you are having human rights violations. You are killing a group of people unnecessarily. And that is what was going on. It's not later that they changed it to civil rights, and then they pulled the three-card Monty, and next thing you know, we in 1964, and white women who are the largest, statistically, are the largest people group in America, become the largest benefactor of minority set-asides. 1964 civil rights legislation was the first time that minority, the word minority, Minority, was put into legislation. It was never used before that time.
Mm.
Never. Never codified, never used. And then white women who in 1860 owned 40% of the enslaved bodies in this country that were worth $4 billion. So they didn't meet the mathematical definition of being a minority, because they're the largest people group even today in America, and they did not meet the legal definition of being a minority.
Mm.
They didn't meet the mathematical nor the legal. So if we don't have that very understanding that DEI, affirmative action, was actually set up to lift white women and children to a certain space, then it's going to be hard for us to then come down and sit down and be like, politically, we might be needing to move in a different way. That's my assertion. And then moving forward, it is easy to set goals because that's what Dr. Amos Wilson tells us. The measure of intelligence is the ability to be able to problem solve and set goals. And so unless we have an understanding of exactly what happened, it's going to be hard to have that conversation of how do we move forward without even having an understanding of that particular type of history. But I encourage people to challenge me on it. What's the largest people group in America? When is the first time minority was legislated in legislation? What was the white wealth year over year when it comes to white women? Please tell me how they were disenfranchised to any degree. Take it back to feminism, the Daughters of the Confederacy, and then the second wave of feminism. I want you to understand who the Daughters of the Confederacy are. What happened in that first wave of feminism on this land, and the why feminism even came up? It was because the black man got the right to vote. Feminism was only started to be anti-black. So any black woman calling themselves a feminist today, you're being anti-black.
Period. She was cooking. Okay, let me cool her off. Let me get the fire extinguisher because my girl Sparkle was on fire. Thank you for that strong submission, my dear. A couple things that I want to say. We are at 44 minutes after the hour. Generally, our conversations last about 2 hours, and I think we're on time to land this plane. Okay, so you can call your friend, come pick you up at the airport. What I would like you to do, everybody, is to first off, take a moment. If you washing dishes, dry your hands. If you're in the car, time to pull over. I'm gonna make some clear calls to action. Number one, Sparkle and King Sick came here very graciously to support our space. And the only way that it makes sense for them to be here is if our community can demonstrate our willingness to engage. And so, what I'm going to put up is a simple call to action. If you guys could give them your favorite emoji, maybe it's a clapping hands, maybe it's a flower, exclamation point, 100, spicy, whatever it is, could you just get your thumbs in action for me, please, and let these two know how much we genuinely appreciate them. That's for everybody in the live app from the top of the stage all the way down to the back of the room. If you guys could throw up an emoji just to give some digital support and let them know that you appreciate them. Second, call to action. Since your thumbs are active, I appreciate it. Scroll on up to the top and take a look at King Siik's Patreon. If you click on the link, you're going to see that he actually has a free version that is accessible to everyone. Now, you might want to get the bachelor's degree version, the master's degree version, or something more advanced. But the least that we could do is get ourselves added to his list so that when he goes back to check, he could say, yes, I could tell the community of Educators House is active and engaged. Okay. So please show some support. Otherwise, I'm going to have a hard time convincing him to come back. And as you can tell, there's some good stuff here. So we definitely want them to come back. So please, my community, I'm not asking you to do anything but push your thumbs and show some digital love. Okay. Next, call to action. We're moving in our next conference to the more modern version of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I want to give a shout out to Joe Blackenter. She's in the listening lounge. She referred me to our next featured speaker. He's already agreed. It's going to be an exciting continuation of this conversation. But I want to pick up sort of where we've left off today, the so called civil rights era of the 1960s, and push into what has the more modern version of DEI and even this language, right? Because it evolved from affirmative action into these other terms. So we're going to take this more modern view in 7 days. So keep that in mind as well. All right. So my calls to action: promote King Siik. Make sure that you guys show some love. I've given you my call to action. We'll see you guys next week, Sunday. We also have some announcements. Educators House has a morning show. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can check us out in the morning as you're getting ready for your day. We have great conversations that kind of lead up to this more professional grade unpacking. So you can check me out. By Any Means Necessary is also available on this app. That's how you're going to find Sparkle and King Siik. They have a variety of topics that they cover far beyond the scope of what we're doing here today. So while I'm here and I don't want to lose time, does anyone else have rooms or announcements that they want to make at this time, moderators or anyone on the stage? I'll leave the mic open. The stage is yours.
I know Tamara got something going on, don't you? As far as the reparations is concerned.
What you got going on, Tamara? Let's hear about it.
Oh, thank you. And I'm before I give you an update on what we got going on, I just want to say again, thank you for Sparkle and King. They have been doing amazing work. Too few people know about them, but I'm proud to say I'm traveling this journey alongside such great people, and we're building. You know, we have to do this and that. I am a reparationist because I want to go get it so I can bring it home where they've already built our, helped to rebuild our communities and rebuild our families. So we have to do this and that. So I'm just, we're all in this together. But Reparations Sunday is the initiative that I lead. Reparations Sunday, for those of us who believe in the churches and believe in this movement. Reparations Sunday is where we are pushing across the nation to make sure that reparations is addressed on a state level, a local level, national level, wherever we can get it. It's owed to us. We want all of it. We don't want the crumbs. We want the whole cake. So we're fighting for it everywhere we can all across this country. But Reparations Sunday for Juneteenth, we have an amazing kickoff to Juneteenth.
Hmm.
We have a tour, and most people don't know the story of the massacre of Ebenezer Creek. But the massacre of Ebenezer Creek is what led to 40 acres and a borrowed mule. And we actually take you to the location where all of that happened. I'm originally from that county. And as a young person growing up, I never understood why I had this burning in my spirit about Black people, but now I get it. It's like I'm my roots are there. So again, we tell the story. We take you on this 2-day experience so that you can understand this history and understand why we have to fight and what is owed to us in this nation. But Reparations Sunday, our Juneteenth kickoff, come join us. It's an experience you won't ever forget. You can come into Atlanta and travel out with us, or you can meet us down in Savannah for Friday and Saturday to experience this 40 acres and a borrowed mule. We actually go to the Green Meldrum House where it was all signed. We go to the site where it all happened. Again, it's an experience that you don't want to miss. And then moving forward, we're going to do this tour all through the fall and up until to Thanksgiving, because we really want to get as many people as we can to come down to the South, y'all. Come on back. Come on
Come
back
on
down
back.
here. Come on back down to the South and understand where your roots are and understand why, this is our time and our time is now. So again, thank you for the space, and I look forward to coming back.
Appreciate you.
Okay. With that said, I'm going to share with you my final calls to action. As I'm doing that, I want to let my stage mates know that we're going to do some final takes. So the way that I've been doing it lately is um, a piece called Remarkable. So think about one sentence, a phrase or sentence that you can use and offer to summarize your experience here as I do these final checks before we land this plane. Number one, please share this conversation. This particular, actually, I'm going to save that for later. I want to let King Siik and Sparkle know something, but I'll do it on the back end. Let folks know that we are back. Okay, so we are in the building, and I thank you all for coming. I am putting the link to the live stream. It is going to be far easier to share the high quality content coming out of Educator's House by sharing the YouTube link, and then we can onboard them here to Clubhouse once they kind of see the high value that we create. So any support that you have is going to be important because this is it. Remarkable. What I've learned is at this young stage, this little house that we have with the strong community that's growing, the only way that we can grow is if we offer something worthy of remark. If anything came up for you over this course, please tell somebody who ain't never heard about Educator's House before. Share some of this high quality conversation, and then you can drop the link on them so that they can experience it for themselves. And so in that spirit, I may not be able to, what can I say? I can't offer you beachfront property, but what I can do is say, let us grow. And the only way that we can grow is with your support. So just find one person and just remark, oh, I was at this thing here. Check it out and drop the link on them. That would be a fantastic way to support. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to make my way up the stage. Give me a sentence or a phrase or something that you would say is worthy of remark as we close. I'm going to go in the exact order that I see it on my stage. So that would be Tamara, the Hood Therapist, Sun Tzu, the facilitator, Dr. Neighborhood. I appreciate your presence and your patience as we unpack, and then we'll go through the moderators. All right, Tamara Johnson Sheely. I'm sorry, I probably said that wrong. But anyway, the mic is yours. Final remark.
Well, I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to speak. And again, you know, we're all we got, Black America. Those of us who are descendants, those of us who are here in these United States, we're all we got. We got to continue to do this work. Let's continue to work together, and let's continue to build. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you for that. Dominique, one sentence or one phrase. What's your final remark, my friend? Mic is yours.
Race is a lie. The only time they bring up race is when they wish to gain power over you.
The Hood Therapist, give us your final phrase or sentence. What is remarkable about today? Mic is yours.
Don't become in a love triangle with history that's it.
Powerful words. I appreciate it. Sun Tzu, the facilitator. What is your remark, my friend? Mic is yours. All right, we're going to move this mic right along to Dr. Neighborhood. Final thoughts. Mic is yours. All right, my two stage mates might be in listen only mode, so I'm going to take a moment and then I'll give it to the moderators. Notice the parallels, if you would please. This will be my final thought, and I'm going to take more than one sentence. Thank you, moderator. Privilege. There's several parallels here that I don't think we can deny, and it will lead into our conversation on next week Sunday. Number one, you have Lincoln assassinated. You have Kennedy assassinated. Lincoln was homeboys with Frederick Douglass, whose counterpart was Garnett. Figured that out today. Kennedy, friends with King, his counterpart, Malcolm X. We also had wartime, right? There was the Civil War happening then. There was the Vietnam War happening now. We have the need for Black bodies in that war, both for the Civil War and for the Vietnamese War, which might have facilitated why we might need to give these Negroes some rights. You know, we had the rise of the Klan, and then we had the rise of this war on drugs, the welfare state, right? There was this other rise of ways to disenfranchise our people. So there are several, what do they say? History doesn't repeat itself, but it damn sure rhymes. There are several interesting parallels between what was going on during the Freedmen's Bureau and the end of the Civil War and what was going on during the air quote civil rights era, or what should be probably called the human rights era, and the Vietnamese War. And so interesting parallels. We're going to pick up where we left off. As my final thoughts, sorry for getting too passionate about it. Let me get down off my soapbook and get back to decorum. Adrian, the educator, Carla, and then we'll pass it to our two featured speakers for the final thoughts. Adrian, educator, mic is yours.
Thank you. I think the one thing that's a great reminder in today's session is history is not black and white, pun intended, and the nuances are just the nuances and layers of history allow us to actually have that 2020 perspective, even when it's hard and whatnot. I think it's very easy to get trapped in both the overly negative and the overly positive of history and kind of miss the actual realities of history, and then understanding it for today's society. I think I was over the, sentence limit, but I figure I could take a little moderator
Little
privilege too.
moderator privilege, never hurt nobody. Carla, the mic is yours.
For me, what came up was we talked about like what happened in Wilmington, and you said that it's happening in other places or has happened and we didn't know it or may never know it. And so it's not so much the attack on a particular city, it's really the attack on progress. It's the attack on a true democracy. And it's an attack on the truth when you hide it, right? So we honor our past by telling it honestly and refusing to let silence rewrite our story. So I'm looking forward to the next segment where we talk about what today. I'll land.
Ooh, Carla, I'm gonna have to keep you around, sis. I like your style. Let me move the mic over to King Sick and Sparkle. I will let the lady go first. Sparkle, the mic is yours. Let's close this thing out.
Hey, you know what? I just want to say thank you to everybody, and I want you guys to understand. I'm a member of the Patreon of King Sick too, so I'm like on first grade, second grade level, or whatever you want to call it, over there. And so, what I want people to understand is I can go from a speaker to a sponge real quick as
Mm,
well. Meaning, I have to take my notes out and study too. So, whenever you all come in and you challenge these things that are being asserted through this research, what I'm doing is like, a tear gets in my eyes because it was just a decade ago that they were telling, that we were passing on a nice little trend that we don't talk about sex, politics, and religion. And it just seemed like all the adult conversations just went away in a small amount of time. And now they're all coming back because people are very interested in discussing these things, and they're thinking, hey, if we don't discuss it, then somebody else is going to go into a room, discuss it, and then they're going to make decisions about it. And so I'm just actually giddy at the fact that people are willing to come to the table and have these conversations, even if you do not agree with the conclusions that are being asserted. We're at least wanting to be able to even just have the discussions. That's so grateful to me, and I love the fact that I'm gonna use it now. I'm gonna bite off that. What did you say? History doesn't repeat itself, but a damn sure rhyme. I'm gonna start using that, what I'm saying, because that's how we vibe. That's how we know we're on the same frequency. That's how I think people can trust the information that we're looking at it with an objective eye, in order to not overcorrect one way or the other, not romanticize it, and not get overly negative about it, but just what happened, so that we can actually give that to folks and say, hey, let's chew off of this for a little while and move on to that. So I appreciate everybody that's came in and contributed to the conversation. I want to hear it all. And I look forward to coming through again. So thank you on this Sunday.
thank you. I mean, I could keep going with the parallels. Even the successor of Lincoln was named Johnson, Andrew Johnson, and the successor of Kennedy was named Johnson, Lyndon B. Johnson, and neither one of them Johnsons was fans of the program. All right, let me stop. I'm stopped. Let me
Man,
stop.
listen.
Pull me down. Hold me back, Sparkle. Hold me back. Okay, I'm sorry.
Both them Andrews too. I was like, oh, I ain't never no child Andrews. That
Right.
name is a little toxic too. I
Never
was like,
again.
ooh.
King Sick, the grand professor, the speaker of wisdom, the challenger of our preconceived notions. Let me pass the mic over to you for your final thoughts, and then we will land this plane, sir. The mic is yours.
Well, I want to start with one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite authors. Dr. Amos Wilson has a book called The Falsification of African Consciousness. Now, just think about the title of that book, The Falsification of African Consciousness. In the book, he says, to manipulate history is to manipulate consciousness. We're talking about history here, and I think a few people have admitted that perhaps they have been opened up to a part of history that they did not know. So to manipulate history is to manipulate consciousness. To manipulate consciousness is to manipulate possibilities. Meaning, if we have a false concept of the Reconstruction, of the Civil War, of slavery itself, of the actions and the things that Black people have built, if we have a false concept of who built these institutions and what their modus operandi or their agenda was, then we have been fooled. And so to manipulate your possibilities is extremely possible if I manipulate your history. So
Hmm.
to manipulate history is to manipulate consciousness. To manipulate consciousness is to manipulate possibilities. And to manipulate possibilities is to manipulate your power, Black people. So this is the reason why we consistently have to have these historical conversations, because our history for the power of white supremacy has had to be altered. It had to be manipulated, because I leave people with this. Who needs who more? Does the slave master need the slave, or does the slave need the slave master? And I think we all know the answer to that question. So the thing about white supremacy in this system that we live in, it only requires Black people, African people to stand up, get up off your knees, and as soon as you stand fully erect, the white man who's on your back is going to fall off, right? And so it is us who allow white supremacy to be what it is. Without us being in the state of consciousness that we are in, without limiting our own possibilities and limiting our own economic, social, and academic power, white supremacy cannot be what it is. So I leave you with that quote from Dr. Amos Wilson's book, The Falsification of African Consciousness. If anybody wants a copy of that book, join the Patreon. The book is there for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't get much better than that. And we're back. Welcome to the Educator's House, where we are the home for personal and professional development, and we do not have a problem tackling the topics that most people want to slide right on past. And so, special thanks to Sparkle and King Sick, our featured speakers. Next week, we're going to have another featured speaker as we do our deep dive in this. How would I call it? Investigative journey on the history and context of diversity, equity, and inclusion, so that we can tackle it clear-eyed when we talk about the intersection of DEI and education. Listen, guys, I'm not going to keep you. You guys, David A.N. is in the building. Hold on. Atlas the Chauvinist is in the building. Wait a minute. We got the heavy hitters. Joe Black is also in the building. Thank you guys for coming. We're going to land this plane, but we're back. And so I thank you guys. Please make sure that you continue to follow us as we continue on our journey. I appreciate everyone's support, but we are going to land this plane. We're going to close this room down at 5 to take this moment while you're being invited to leave the room. Scroll up and down, five people who have added value to your space, add them to your network so that you can improve your hallways, because you know it's a mess out there. We're going to close this room down in 4. Please understand that we do this for you. I could have totally made this a private conversation, and I could have just invited my fellow stage mates up here, and we could have just done it amongst ourselves. But we do this because we're on a mission to spread this good information, to push the conversation forward, and to challenge our preconceived notions. So we do this for you. Next, we're going to close this room down in 3. We do not have to agree, but we can disagree and treat each other respectfully. And so I want to give a special thanks to all of my stage mates who have maintained, those who have come and have gone. Thank you guys for your decorum, for your willingness to follow the culture of this space, and for your courageous honesty and your participation in the conversation. Finally, we're going to close this room down in 2. As your humble servant, I am here to serve. So if you have any ideas on how I can make this space more productive, more valuable, more credible, hit me in my back channel. Give me some, what would I call it? Critical feedback, positive encouragement, or shoot, you can slide over to my PayPal and give me some financial support. I don't mind. But I'll save that for a future day. I will close this room down in 1. My final message to you as we end: you're the one. Listen, you're the most important part to this entire endeavor. If we are going to change the face of education, especially now during while the paradigm is shifting, is the opportunity. During the chaos is where opportunity reigns. And so I say to you, listen. The only way that we are going to make the change is together from the front lines. We can no longer rely on the powers that be, the technocrats, the bureaucrats, and the rich ones to do what is happening in our very classrooms with our very own children. It's got to be up to us, and I'm here as a educational community organizer to get us together to start making some meaningful change. And so you're the one, the most important part to this. And I say, please continue to support, spread the word. If there's something remarkable, share it with somebody so that we can grow organically, rather than leaving me feeling like I have to depend on the algorithm. No, I depend on you, and your support is what's most important. All right, guys, I don't know where the after party's at, but wherever it is, first drinks on me, and I will see you guys there. King Sick, and yeah, King Sick. Let's get offline because I want to talk about what we're going to do with this. So let's have a follow-up conversation as soon as possible. And for everyone else, peace. I'm out of here.
Check your back channel, Brother Thompson. Check your back channel.
Yes, sir. We'll do.
Bye.
Bye.
Dude, we love you, man. Keep it going.
Yes, sir. Appreciate your support. All right, all right, all right. I guess everybody else got thick thumbs or something, so I'm gonna go ahead and close the room down. No, I'm joking. This the after party, y'all. We got the scrubs out of here. Now let's get. No, I'm joking. Just joking, just joking. I will see you guys next time. Check me Monday morning for the morning show, 4 a.m. You can check me Monday, Wednesday, Friday live. I do a variety of things. I have office hours where I do consultation time. I'm in other people's rooms sharing my personal and professional development thoughts. So just check me out at Educator's House on whatever platform. And I'm officially closing the room down. Peace, everybody. Peace, peace. All right, did that thing. Let's close this club deck. We'll include this. Oh, I'm still on YouTube. Hey, YouTube, I'm over here about to kick back for a minute. All right, YouTube. Thank you guys. This is I'm going to tell this to my featured speakers, but I might as well tell it to you first. If you captured the live, you caught it, because in less than 24 hours, I'm actually going to take this, our professional grade conference, down off of access from YouTube. I'm going to make it only available to the subscribers. So it's sort of a reverse Patreon. As I build a community, those who subscribe to this community, you guys will get access to this archive of replays that I'm building. So you definitely want to become a subscriber now while it's absolutely free, because as I build this thing, then it only makes sense, if this is a real business, that there are going to be some paywalls. So while you have the access to become a subscriber, if you want more details, you can let me know in the chat or hit me in the back channel, and I'll let you know exactly how. But I'm building this house, this digital real estate, in order to create the highest quality conversations and professional development conferences available to the educational community. And so if that's you, teacher, an educator of any stripe, parent of a school-aged child, or a community member concerned about what's going on in education, then you're my target market, and you are who I am here to serve. What can I say? I think that's it. So thank you. Please engage. If this is the type of thing that you want, let me know through your engagement, and I can look at the analytics of all that we do in order to find out where we really belong. Okay, I think that's it, guys. I'm going to click on this end stream button. But thank you, Leticia, and all those who came through the YouTube. And for those of you on the replay, good on you, man. Let's go to the next higher level. I'm out. If I can find the button.